Hey, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to the Hanging On to Hope podcast.
I'm Brenda J.
And I'm Karen Wonder.
And we are HangingOnToHope.org.
This podcast is intended as educational and is not psychological or medical advice. Always consult a professional when needed, and we disclaim any liability in connection with the instruction, information, or advice given. This podcast episode discusses the details of domestic violence. Some listeners might find this traumatizing and triggering. Do not listen to this podcast if you feel you may be triggered in any way. If this episode becomes triggering while you are listening, practice self-care and turn off the episode. If you need to talk to someone, you can reach out to your local crisis line or the website thehotline.org or their phone number 1-800-799-SAFE, 1-800-799-7233. All the links are provided in the show notes. Hello, and thank you for tuning into the Hanging On to Hope podcast. This is Karen W. On today's podcast, we are bringing back Rachel to the podcast. She shared her story and ongoing battle with the court system and seeking justice for her children in episodes 132 and 133. We're going to get an update on Rachel's case, as well as talk to Maria, a mom also seeking justice and protection for her children who are now living with their abuser. We know it's not easy to listen to stories of abuse, but I encourage you to listen so that these cases can be exposed to the wrong that is being done, which directly puts children at risk for abuse in all forms, and not only puts the children's lives in danger, but causes the children to be isolated from their mother. We listen to their stories so we can stand with them in the fight against court corruption and to seek accountability in the court system. So welcome back to the show, Rachel, and welcome to the show, Maria.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. We're so glad to be here.
We're glad you're here.
And thank you for taking the time and the bravery to share your stories of abuse, as we know this isn't easy. We want to get right to it. So, Rachel, if you'd like to give us an update on your case since we last spoke to you.
Thank you so much. Yes. Well, I wish I could tell you that, things have changed substantially, but unfortunately they have not. I have not seen my children since August 16th, at which time it was disclosed again that they are currently being physically abused as well as mentally and emotionally. It was also revealed at that time that the photos that I had given them of me, just so that they could have a sense of hope, was taken from them, and that they had been subjected to mental abuse, with phone calls being made about a mobile crisis to say that they were acting in an inappropriate way. So unfortunately, I haven't seen my children. Tomorrow will be 2 months. I'm still holding out hope. I'm still trusting in God, and I'm really just leaning on His understanding and also leaning on AZPAC for other survivors and other supporters who I'm learning are going through the same thing that I'm going through. So to answer your question, I'm still actively fighting to get my children safe.
Wow. So sorry to hear that.
I'm sorry.
I just don't understand how these things are going on. So you told me that you were told by the supervisor the court uses that you won't be able to see your kids again until an investigation has been done on you, not on the abuser, and that the supervisor actively identified that your children are being abused. Do you want to share more about that unethical treatment that you've received?
Absolutely. So to clarify, the supervisor has had a multitude of positions. It seems like they repurpose her for wherever they see fit, with her having no experience or expertise. Just wherever they can fit her in, they utilize her. So to clarify, she's the one who elected to do an independent investigation on me. And so instead of monitoring the visitations with my children that I was supposed to have supervised visitation with her, being the monitor, she decided she was going to do an independent investigation. And in doing so, she identified that there were several conflicts of interest, which, if things were done in an ethical way, would disqualify her from being on my case. Specifically, I had been subpoenaed to testify against her in a case related to another family that she had acted in an inappropriate manner with. Likewise, a friendship that I have well before any of these things happened with my children, involving someone with whom she is close. And she identified a few other things. So I thought that was very peculiar and bizarre that in her report, instead of identifying specifically the abuse that was going on that my children were actively reporting to her, she elected to report several conflicts of interest. And specifically, she even identified the Hanging On to Hope podcast podcast that I did with you all, stating that I am disclosing things related to the case to the court and exposing court personnel. And then at the very end of her report, she says, oh, and by the way, the children are reporting that they're being abused. So it was very, very peculiar, very bizarre. I tried to use that as a catalyst to eliminate her from my case as, it's inappropriate. And she did not do her due diligence in reporting it. But again, she was not removed from the case, and I have not seen my children since then. So the things continue onward. It's very inappropriate and very, very unsettling, because it's almost as if, and when you speak to Maria, I'm sure she'll really piggyback off of this. It's not that what I did wrong. This is the court. What's wrong is that you're identifying what I did was wrong. So it's almost as if they're throwing the rock and holding and hiding the hand. And so it's a very, very peculiar and bizarre thing with no accountability. So we're still in the midst of it.
Wow. And you didn't name any names like on the podcast. I mean, but I'm sure she recognized that she was one of the roles that you're, talking about.
And I'm not sorry. I have absolutely no, regrets about doing the podcast. It was an integral part of this. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity and the platform. And I think that really speaks volumes that you would utilize. The person is telling the truth. We need to be very careful because this person is exposing us, and we need to silence this person. So as a result of that, podcast, which I'm not have any regrets for, they submitted a request that my case be sealed, that I not be able to speak about my case, that I not be able to disclose the unconstitutional things that are happening in my case, that I need to be made to be silent, and that I not have access to even my own records, which of course is unconstitutional and against the law.
It's just,
oh my goodness. I'm in shock right now.
Yeah, mine too. It's just such a corrupt system.
So do you have any requests that our listeners can do to help spark more exposure and help bring justice to your case?
I think that we are really, and it's so unusual because I have excitement in my heart. Like I have so much joy in my heart, because I would say that podcasts like yours are really shedding a light on so many inadequacies that are happening, so many things that are being hidden, because of course the devil operates in the dark, and they give us a spirit of fear. And so I think that when we push past that, the best thing that your listeners could do to assist us is really continuing to share the podcast, reach out to AZPAC and other organizations likewise that seek to really hold people accountable for their actions. This is a democracy, and we really, as the people, need to take back our power and take back our children, and so to answer your question, just really exposing it and seeking to realize that the moms are coming, and they're not afraid. We're pushing past the fear, and we are doing what we are entitled to and what we're supposed to do to protect our children. So just joining us is the best thing that anybody can do.
Do you have like the specific, so Arizona PAC, is that the
Arizona Parents Against Court Corruption? It's an open Facebook group. And likewise, we've had a lot of positive things happen even since last time I was on here. PACI's law was passed, and there's so many people coming out from that. And we're really in a place, I think, of healing as a people, not just here in Maricopa County, Arizona, but really across the country. There are moms in Ohio rising up. There are moms in Texas rising up. Certainly the mothers in California are rising up. And I think that it's so important that no matter where your listeners are, that wherever they are, they need to realize that there is a coalition or a support group that needs them and needs their voice and needs their power. And if they could connect, not to us because they're not here, they could connect to them, that would be amazing, because there's power in numbers. And we just really need to take our children's safety back. We need to demand it.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're
Yes.
absolutely right.
Yes.
That's how change does happen, is
Right.
there has to be people standing up. That's why we're doing the podcast too.
And I would like to just kind of piggyback off of that, because we are trying to be getting Parents Peaceful Picnic put together the first week of November. And so if you are a protective parent local to Arizona and you are trying to make a difference, we are urging you to reach out to us and connect with us and join us out here to really make ourselves heard and not be silenced. We want to really get our message out there and let them know that we are here to take our children back. And we are not going to continue to just stand by and let them continue this blatant abuse to children and child trafficking to occur through the family court system.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. So Maria, did you want to give us an overview of your story?
Yeah, so I initially left my abuser back in 2017. I had gotten an order of protection against him. There was already concerns of sexual abuse at that time. I was initially awarded primary parent. I had 70% custody and he had 30%. That came out in January of 2019. There were several concerns already reported during that time that the court took some action immediately, but not very much. Like I said, I did get at least Buddy's primary parent, so things were at least ruled okay at the time.
Yeah.
That custody arrangement went on until fall of 2021. Starting in the summer of 21, my children started kind of expressing a disdain about having to go over to their fathers. My oldest was 15 at the time, and she was really becoming just extremely emotional about having to go over there. At this point, she had started becoming very retreated to herself and isolated, not wanting to come out of her room. And there's just a change in her normal and overall demeanor. I continued to make them go until September of 21. I had found out while they were over at their father's that my daughter had been cutting herself. When she came back from her dad's, we discussed, her self-harm and what was happening. During our conversation, it came out at that time that she was scared of her father, that he was having some mental breakdowns again and fighting with his girlfriend, punching holes in the wall, saying he was going to kill himself, which that's normal behavior from him in the past. This has happened before. And then she made comments that she was scared that he was going to hurt her and her brothers, and that he was scared he would touch her. I asked her if he had, and she would not answer me. She would only shrug her shoulders. I let her know it was really concerning, when you're not telling me anything that I need to know, and she wouldn't answer. At that point, I sought the court's help. I started reaching out to every agency imaginable, RAINN, DCS, any sort of hotline that I could find. I started calling counselors to get her into counseling. I called the police. The police told me that they would not take a report at the time because her being scared that he would touch her doesn't mean that he has, so they were not going to do anything. And then they advised that I go and get an order of protection. So I did. I went and I got an order of protection. Well, I requested one, I should say, for my daughter and my two younger boys. They denied it for my boys and myself and only put my daughter on it, and then told me that I needed to go to family court if I wanted to protect the boys. That was the biggest mistake right there. I should have never gone to family court yet, but I did. That same day, I went over to family court and I requested emergency custody, which was granted for 10 days. They set the hearing about a week later, which was all during my parenting time anyhow. When I went to the court, the judge had said basically that because DCS and the police did not do anything, that nothing must have happened. Father had come in and said that I'm coaching the kids. I'm telling them to say this stuff about him and that it's not true. So the judge took it upon himself to squash the order of protection that father never petitioned to have squashed. So whole different court. He squashed it. And then he said that I needed to let the kids go back to our original schedule, which was every other week from Wednesday after school to Monday morning drop off is the time that he was supposed to have them. I pleaded with the judge, sir, I'm not going to just push my kids out the door after they just told me all of this stuff. What do you think is going to happen? Right? What do you think is going to happen to my kids? I'm not going to just push them out. And he was like, if you don't make them go, I'm going to take them from you and I'm going to put them with him 100%. I'm like a mess crying. And I'm like, sir, please don't do that. And he's like, then you better make them go. And that's the end of the hearing. My daughter, I had scheduled her at this point an appointment for the gynecologist. I had to go back and make plans with my daughter, right? She's the oldest. Safety plan that was advised, we had gotten into some counseling and they had advised that we put a safety plan together because I'm telling them the court's saying I have to make them go back. So what do I do? So we put the safety plan together of certain code words. We had 2 different code words put together. One meant come and meet me at the school. That way she could tell me something that happened in front of other people. Right. So if something crazy happened at the house, someone else was hearing it besides me because I'm the one who's not being believed. And then the other one meant call 911. I need help right now. So we put that plan together. We had an appointment set up at the gynecologist because now I'm concerned from what she's telling me. We go to the gynecologist. I do not go in with her. She goes by herself into the office. After so long, the doctor comes out and she tells me that she's going to call the police and she is calling DCS and that it didn't matter what my daughter wanted, that she didn't have a say, that she had to do that and that my boys could not go with him either. So they called the police and DCS and the police come to the office. They tell me that I need to get the kids from school, that they are stopping his visitation because his visitation was supposed to be occurring that day. So I got the kids picked up from school. DCS came to the house and told me that they wouldn't talk to the kids about anything about the sexual abuse things, that they would be there with the detective. So we were supposed to go to the detective the next day to have a meeting with my daughter. So the next day we went down to Peoria and we met with the detective who took my daughter into a questioning room by herself with nobody else present. DCS wasn't present. I'm like a child forensic psychologist. Nobody was there with her. They made her go by herself and they questioned her for 18 minutes. and they told me that my daughter did disclose abuse. She disclosed some abuse that happened recently, sexual abuse that had happened to her when she was younger, prior to me and her father splitting. And they told me that there would be nothing they can do because there's no DNA and there is no video. And unless he admits it, that they can't do anything, so that my daughter could do a confrontation call. Problem with that is the day before, they already called him and told him about the whole investigation. So she doesn't ever talk to him on the phone, for one, ever, because he never speaks to the kids on the phone ever. And two, you've already told him about everything that's going on. What is she going to confront him about?
Yeah.
So that didn't happen. So this investigation went on for about 2 visits that he had. Okay, through the beginning of October and then the end of October. So his second visit would have been the end of October. It was on the 27th of 2021. Yeah. And he came the night before the boys were supposed to be interviewed on the 28th. So they were supposed to have an interview the next morning. He showed up at our house at like 9-10 o'clock at night with the police, like pounding and ringing on the door. And I wouldn't answer. And the kids were just terrified, right? The police didn't take anything because they reached out to the detective who told, no, there's still an active investigation. So they didn't take any report for him. They leave. The next day we have the meeting with the boys. My boys didn't disclose anything and I knew that they weren't going to. After that, they're like, okay, you have to make them go back over to their dad. Okay. So the investigation is done. There's nothing they can do. They can leave it open in case anything else comes out, but there's nothing they can do at the time. So during this time as well, GCS has also been telling me that if I let them go, I can be charged with failure to protect. So if I let them go to their dads, I'm not protecting them and they can charge me with the crime. But then if I don't make them go, then the judge is going to take them from me. So I'm just like it doesn't matter what I do. I'm going to lose my kids no matter what, basically. So the 28th, it still would have been his parenting time of 2021, October 21. He didn't try to get them any further. He never tried to get them one time. On November 24th, and so he should pick them up from school after school on Wednesdays. So it would have been like October 27th and then November 13th and then Thanksgiving week. Well, but for 2021, I got the kids for the Thanksgiving holiday per the court order. So he could have got them for like a few hours that Wednesday, but he didn't ever try. He instead went to the court and filed an emergency order and had said that I had taken off with the kids, which we were camping because we do that every year. I had taken off with the kids and he was at fear of me being like emotionally unstable and that I had let my daughter drop out of school and that she was doing drugs and having sex with her boyfriend. And that the judge said if I didn't allow him to have his parenting time, that he would take them from me and put them with him 100%. So that's what he puts in his emergency order. And the judge grants it to him. And it's all lies. Everything that he wrote's a lie, proven. So we have a hearing in December. Well, let's say, so November 29th of 2021, that Monday, the kids go to school. He doesn't ever serve me. He never serves me any paperwork. He just takes it to the school and the school calls me and says that my daughter couldn't leave early to her counseling appointment because you have to call the school and notify them before you were allowed to leave. So she can't leave with you, that their father just came and filed some sort of emergency paperwork. And so obviously I'm like, well, what are you talking about? Go into panic mode. I go down to my boys' school, meet with the principal. He shows me the emergency order, not the petition, just the order that's saying I must immediately surrender my kids to him. So I talked to the principal because the principal and them already knew what was happening at both of the schools. And I say, can I get my kids their little watches? He says, yes. I talked to my daughter. I text her and let her know saying, you're going to have to go with your dad. He just got emergency custody. She's saying, like, what's that mean? And it's saying that, like, you have to go with him. She starts going into full-blown panic mode, obviously. She was supposed to have a counseling appointment. And so I told her to be calling her counselor over the phone since she couldn't go in person. That way, because she was I didn't know what to be doing either at this point. She needed help coping. So she got onto her counseling appointment. And then I went and I got all of my kids' stuff, like their phone chargers and their watches and everything. And I went to go drop them off. They didn't allow me to do it. The principal then changed his mind at the boys' school. And so then I went to go and meet my daughter. I met my daughter. I gave her her stuff. She's on the phone with her counselor. And during that time, the counselor's manager is also calling me at the time saying, like, your daughter is in full blown, like, breakdown mode right now. And when I'm letting her know, like, I know what I'm letting them know what's happening and stuff. And then I go and I meet my daughter as I'm giving her her stuff and trying to help console her while she's also like breaking down with her counselor. We're right in front of the principal's office, but like over in the bus lane. And then the school resource officer and just like some of their security came over and they're like, you can't take her. And I'm like, I'm not trying to take her. I'm just bringing her her stuff. He hasn't served me anything. I haven't seen anything. So the police officer gave me the paperwork for the school. I tell him everything that's going on. He gave me the order. I'm like, does this mean I'm not allowed to talk to them? He says, no, it doesn't say that. He tried getting a restraining order against you. They denied it. You can still talk to your daughter and stuff. You can talk to the kids. So my kids go with him. Obviously, I'm like a disaster at this point. And my daughter's she's still texting me. And I know that she's upset. The next morning, she sends me a text saying how they don't have any clothes that fit them because he doesn't ever provide anything for them. So they didn't have clothes that fit them. And she's like wearing the same stuff. And she just started her period. And I'm like telling her, like, I'm really sorry because I can't even do anything. There's literally nothing I can do. And we had Life 360 on our phone. And if anybody, I always recommend at this point to always have that on any of your guys' phones with your children if you're able to. So I had that on our phones, and she was texting me. It was after the time she was supposed to be at school. And I knew that he wasn't taking her. Basically, he took the boys to school, and then instead of taking her to school, he started going back to the house, and he didn't take her. And so I saw that already from the Life 360, and I'm like, that's what's happening. I'm already in panic mode. And so much stuff happened that day. It's still like, oh my God. So I'm watching this at the house, and I'm watching it like all of a sudden like dart around, almost like she was being chased or something. And so I'm start panicking, like, what's going on? And my friend lived down the street from his house. And so I called my friend and she can go over and see what was happening, make sure she's not being chased around by him. She pulls up, and as that's happening, I all of a sudden got a text message with our code word. And it's from like a number I didn't know. And it was our code word to call 911 that I need help right now. And so obviously I start panicking. I call 911. I'm telling them like, everything that's kind of transpired. That's what this word means. I don't know what's happening, but that's what this means. And so it ended up being my daughter's ex-boyfriend that has been texting me saying that she had locked herself in the bathroom, that he wouldn't take her to school. He drove her home instead of taking her to school, and she started freaking out, saying like, no, please take me to school. And he started threatening her to take her, that he was going to put her in a mental hospital or in foster care if she didn't do what he said, and that he hit her. And so I'm relaying this. And then I'm on the computer at the same time, and I start getting the emails in my personal email, on my work email from her saying, Mom, I'm so scared, and our code word. And I told her I'd called 911 to go outside. And she said she did, and that she wanted to go to the hospital. And I'm just still thinking at this time she's just having like a panic attack, or that's what I'm thinking, is that she's just like way overstimulated right now because of everything that's happening. And so my friend was there, which they didn't know. And she was down the road, and she's telling me at the same time that the ambulance had come up. And so she was able to follow the ambulance to the hospital. And so that's how I found out like everything, because her dad didn't tell me nothing. He didn't tell me anything about what transpired. So I found out that she was at the hospital. I called the hospital. The first time I called, he was with her, they said, and I still don't know what's going on. And I call back in a little bit, and then they're telling me that, like she was doing okay, that they had just gotten her hooked up to an antidote. And I'm like, what do you mean an antidote? And then so the nurse obviously got quiet because he's already thinking like, how don't you already know that? And so I'm thinking like, I'd like to hear you telling me that she like tried overdosing. And so he told me that she tried to overdose. She had taken a bunch of Tylenol. And so the nurse, they would give me an update like through that night. They let me bring stuff up to the front station. He started telling them he had a restraining order against me and that I wasn't allowed to talk to the kids, which he didn't. But the hospital wouldn't do anything. So it's like, it didn't matter that I was calling their legal team, leaving messages, they would just ignore you. So my daughter was like in the ICU. There was an angel though. She had an angel with her who was like when you attempt suicide, somebody has to stay with you and sit with you. And that woman was an angel because she would still let my daughter use her personal cell phone to call me and to text me and send me a picture just so that like I would know that she was okay. I thought lady risked everything. So it's like, I know she was an angel. So that happened. My daughter stayed in the hospital for about a month. They were only supposed to keep her for like 10 days. They transferred her to like a behavioral health hospital. The hospital really tried. They tried to keep her as long as they possibly could so that she wouldn't have had to go back. And they waited until we had another court date. Our court date, of course, wasn't until like the middle of December. We get in there at that point saying like, listen, everything that I just said was going to happen is exactly what happened. I told you what would happen if What did you think would happen? If someone says that someone abuses them and then you're going to put them right back in their care, what do you think is going to happen? They didn't care. The judge came in right away. He didn't read any of my stuff. I had hired a lawyer at that point. As soon as he walked in, he was like, oh, I remember this case. Yep, I told mother that if she didn't make the kids go, then I would take them from her and put them with him. And that's exactly what happened. I remember. And my lawyer was like, did you read the response? And he was like, no. And it's like, oh, okay. So you just came in here and you've already made your mind up against me because you already don't like me because I spoke up against you the first time. And so at the end of that court hearing, he kept the kids with father. Said that I got 2 hours a week parenting time with the kids, supervised, and 2 30-minute phone calls because I've made reports to DCS. So I'm the danger. So then they let my daughter out in the end, I think December 20th, 21st, one of those days right there of the hospital. He let me see them on Christmas Day at the park while him and his mom hovered right at the next table. After that, he did not let me see them. He withheld them from me until April of 2022. I didn't get to see or talk to my kids. He switched their schools. He switched their doctors. He withdrew the boys from counseling, changed everything. Their dentist, eye doctor, literally every single thing he changed. In January of 22, so when the first hearing in December went bad, I fired that attorney because I was like, what the heck, right? How is this happening? And then I got a different attorney because I'm like, maybe I need someone who's more aggressive and is going to say what's happening because no one wants to talk about what's actually happening here. So I get a different attorney. We file an enforcement in January of 2022, and the judge would not rule on it. It was just to enforce my parenting time. He would not rule on it. So in mid-February, filed another thing. Hey, Anna said something on this motion to enforce. Finally ruled on it in March and set it for the middle of April. So finally in April, he didn't even set it as an actual contempt hearing. Instead, he did it as a status conference. So that way, nothing can actually be presented. No evidence can be presented or anything against him. So we go into that hearing. And again, the judge is just completely biased against me. It doesn't matter that father just blatantly withheld the kids from me for 5 months completely. He didn't get anything. He got, father, you just can't take it upon yourself. You can't do that. You have to seek the court's help. But, I'm concerned too with everything mother's put the court through. What have I put the court through? You mean filing an enforcement of the court's order? Okay. So they appoint a supervising agency now. Since he wouldn't oblige to the other parenting time schedule, they now put an agency in that I had to pay for. And then they put in 2 conflicting things within the order stating that I had to pay 80% and he had to pay 20%. And then later on, it says that I have to pay for all of it. So because it said that, he would refuse to pay anything. So I was having to pay then $980 a month to see my kids for 2 hours a week and get to talk to them for 2 30-minute Zoom calls. Not one of my parenting time reports are bad about me. Not one. They're all stating concerns about what the kids are disclosing with father, right? About all of these different things that are going on. All of it was just dismissed. And we requested a final hearing with the initial judge, right, that we had. And he's telling us how he's going to be rotating out. And so this was in April, right? And we requested to have a final hearing. And instead, he then set a hearing for contempt charges in September, not a final hearing. So we had a different judge at that point. She found father in contempt and sanctioned him and told him he had to pay money and everything, which nobody cares about, but didn't change my parenting time at all. Right? Just said I had some makeup supervised parenting time. That's it. Part of that was my attorney's screw up because she didn't catch that in time. So eventually there was a lot of things that went on with the attorneys were not great representation. I finally got rid of all of the attorneys and I started representing myself pro se in December of 22. I was able to file a motion and got myself off a supervised visitation, right? Because I should never be on it. I've never done anything that warrants it. Able to get off of it, but not increase my parenting time. During this time still, my kids are not being taken care of at all. I had our final hearing in April of 2023. During this time also, I should say, from September of 22 to April of 23, there was 5 different judges during that time on my case, which doesn't really make any sense. So 5 different judges who would rotate out. One after the other. Anytime someone touched my case, they would get immediately off. So then we had our final hearing. The judge who gave me the order of protection and told me to go to family court is the judge who now ruled at our final hearing. And she ruled that I should only get 2 hours a week now still for indefinitely. And I have no decision making. So that's where we're at with like the current parenting time schedule. And then if I wanted to increase it at all, they want them to reconsider, I needed to get a forensic psych evaluation, which that's because, my doctor's testifying on my behalf, writing notes on my behalf. A normal psychological evaluation was not enough to say that I don't have any mental health issues. So I have actually tried to do that still. I've already done that and resubmitted it to the court, and they've also still denied it. So it's like, that's kind of where I'm standing right now with the court.
Where are your children currently living?
Yeah, so my kids are currently with their father, probably maybe like 15 minutes down the road from me.
Yeah. And what actions have you taken to fight the custody? Did you want to elaborate on that?
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I've done everything they've asked of me and more.
To be continued. Stay tuned for next week's part 2. You don't want to miss it.
Thanks for tuning in to Hanging On to Hope. Check out our website, hangingontohope.org. There are resources on there, and if you would like to donate or volunteer, you can do that through our website. We are a brand new nonprofit, so we appreciate any and all support. And we thank you for listening. And until next time, keep hanging on to hope. We are evidence that there is hope and healing for you, and our passion is to help you find it too. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for listening, everyone.